If you gave a caveman a single Dorito, you know the Doritos you get at the end of the bag where all it is dust, and it's like you eat it and you might be transferred to like another world. If you gave that to a caveman, your head would literally explode.
Yeah.
That concentrate. So here's the analogy. You thought I was done? Here it comes. If you gave a caveman TikTok for an hour, what do you think would happen to them?
Oh, they would explode. Yeah.
Their brains would melt, right? Their brains would literally melt.
Yeah.
So there's the analogy I make. It's like evolutionarily, like the original person was not meant to have Doritos.
All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. You got Trung and Bilal here. Trung, what's going on today, brother?
So listeners, this is my bad. Today's episode is going to be pretty focused and short because a little inside baseball is I'm not going to be able to record on Tuesday, our usual time. Go. So if we didn't record today, which is now Thursday of last week.
We're doing a few days early, so there's some evergreen topics here
There's like 5 days before we usually record. And this is all on me, but we're so committed to the business of NIA that
there we go.
We're doing the. So Bilal, let's jump right into it. We're going to talk about the history and science behind Doritos. And I just want to frame it as that, and then I'll ask you a question at the end. But there's all this stuff we talk about on the show. Here's why it's relevant. If you think about what's happened with food, the food game, right? Industrial production of food. And like we talk about it, right? Like, blah, how bad is processed food? Everything's processed around.
Very bad.
Is this right? No, but I mean, like, it's to cause the obesity crisis, right? You can draw a direct parallel, a lot of it, with actually the industrial
hyper-palatable foods, overeating, overconsumption.
Exactly. Well, dude, so let me tee up this tweet then. So this is the meme of the week. It's pretty hysterical. So why don't you read that to the listeners?
I'll read it. You go for it.
All right. We take it for granted today, but a single Dorito has more extreme nacho flavor than a peasant in the 1400s would get in his whole lifetime.
Yeah. Do you know what, Trug, before we go into all this, you know when you teed up, because you texted me this, you're like, oh, this is a topic I want to do. I've been researching it, writing it. And I was cracking up because I was like, this is the most Trung text I've ever received. It was so serious and earnest. I loved it. I was like, I want to talk about the history of Doritos. I'm like, what the hell is in a good way? It's like very Trung in a good way. You find these rabbit holes. And when you just teed it up a second ago, why you want to talk about it, I thought you were about to hit NASA. You know, you're like, oh, you know, like the space program. And then we discover this material and then that ends up in an iPhone, like that vibe. I thought that's where you're going with it. So is that where we're going? Is that the end of the obesity crisis comes from Doritos?
There's a parallel track that I don't know if we'll be fully able to flesh out, but the parallel track is this. The industrial production of media on our smartphone and the way we consume content, there are parallels with the industrial production and creation of Dorito. Dorito is basically the perfect snack. It is.
Okay.
We'll explain why it's the perfect snack, but it has a lot to do with human physiology and how it's designed, the actual Dorito. But the point is, it's the same way that TikTok is the perfect medium to deliver 5 hours of content into your brain, right?
Got it. Okay.
But
so you're breaking it down, all the inputs, the variables that made it.
You're making the key point here, breaking it down, but it's like, what is the ultimate unit we're trying to do? What is the unit of a Dorito? It's a calorie, right? It's a perfect vehicle for calorie, except the problem is that that calorie is completely useless. It's a completely empty calorie. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
TikTok is its unit is attention, and it will Bilal knows.
Yeah, you're doing it. I love this.
TikTok can
so
deliver.
TikTok is the Doritos of social media.
It's a Dorito-fication of social media. I'm not the first person to say it. Like, shout out to a friend of the podcast, Adam Singer, had a great write-up last week about Instagram, TikTok being poisoned, similar to how processed sugars and certain types of industrialized oils are for you. But then also, you know, Cal Newport, right? The of Deep Work fame.
Yeah.
He had a great piece. Did we ever talk about ultra processed food? It's a very popular book that came out this year.
I don't know if we talked about the book. No.
So Cal Newport quickly wrote about. But he was just basically saying you can look at the history of media in the same way you can look at the food production line. Like you and me going out to a farmer's market buying corn, right? If we just bought corn, that'd be the equivalent of reading a book, as in that's the source material. There's no, it's not intermediated by a smartphone.
Just the whole food, you mean? There's no like processing.
Exactly, it's the whole food. And then you start moving along to television, podcast, social media, right? The entire way. So the equivalent analogy would be that piece of corn has been fried, has been baked, has been dusted this special potion that Doritos has on top, right? You see what I'm saying? You're taking
Got
that
you. Okay.
original whole food. You're seeing where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah, you're taking an 8-hour podcast that
Yeah.
someone did and turning it into that 1 minute with the hyper animated stuff.
Exactly,
That's
dude.
the Dorito.
And
Okay.
the funny thing is like this whole movement of these 90-second short videos. And I know we both watch a lot now, especially now that they're all in YouTube Shorts. Listen, information can be delivered that way. So I actually asked this, Bilal, have you ever learned anything from TikTok?
Oh yeah, lots.
Would you? Okay, so it is a learning tool. So what? But the question is, there's a big difference between getting that 90-second hit, never thinking about it again, or thinking about it for 2 seconds, versus reading, sitting, contemplating, making all those new neurological connections while you're sitting down with just a book, right? Obviously.
Yeah, but I will say to defend it too. I know.
Okay, fair enough.
I wouldn't isolate it as just a 60 or 90-second video. That's just one of hundreds or thousands of videos I'd watch on a topic. So let's just give one specific example. Gym stuff, right? So like I've watched lots of gym stuff on Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And it's all the details of like, learning all the stuff that a personal trainer would be teaching you in person. Obviously, a personal trainer one-on-one is better because they're watching your form, etc.
That's the corn, right? That's the whole
that's
food
the corn.
Yeah,
exactly. But this isn't necessarily, the Dorito terrible for you version. It's actually helping me quite significantly. And every time I watch it, it doesn't mean it's a completely new information. Sometimes it's reinforcing, reinforced learning. Like when what's it called? Space repetition or whatever?
Space repetition. Yeah.
Exactly. So you keep hearing the same stuff and you start seeing patterns. And the other thing is it encourages you to keep doing it if that's what my algorithm is. If the algorithm is just addictive, terrible stuff for me, that's kind of the
that's
alternative.
The Dorito.
That's the Dorito, yeah.
I love how you tease that out because before getting to the science and history, which I'll do right after this segment, I just want to jump on what you said, which is the key point here. This isn't to say everything broad brush that's done short form media, digital through your phone is bad. In the same way that industrial production obviously has done very good things for society, right? Like you couldn't support 9 billion people without industrial production of food. The broader question is exactly what you pointed out at the end there. You have to pick and choose. Like, can you avoid the Doritos when you go to the corner store or the grocery store because they're right at the front, right? Or like they have those snacks ready for you at checkout, playing off your impulses. It's the exact same as these thirst traps as soon as you open Instagram. The grid is just you
gotta train the algorithm, man. You gotta stop.
Oh, dude, what? Dude's not even training it. George
I know.
Friend of the pod was just like, hadn't been on IG in ages. Like, to open the thing, the grid's just like thirst trap. I mean, it's that, right? It's like it's hitting your lizard brain. So agree with you that in the way that you're using the gym content as educational, it's just can you navigate all that nonsense?
Yeah, you got to tiptoe around all the other stuff
in the same way that you go to a grocery store in industrials, in 2024. I mean, the positive thing here is that a lot of chains and food makers have realized this blowback, right? And like they are being much more conscious. Now, the question is, will that happen with media? That's up to the algorithm, but the incentives are just not there really, right? It's like the incentive is attention.
But that's a good point because, and I will also say, obviously my whole feed has got lots of that other terrible stuff. And it's also just like entertainment stuff a lot of the time, or football stuff a lot of the time, and comedians.
Like you can enjoy a Dorito, right? Like you're allowed to enjoy
That's what I was about to say. You can enjoy a Dorito, but the way to enjoy a Dorito is have like a set amount and put it away so that you're not looking at it all day. Or like we've talked about the M&M thing in the past, remember? Like the peanut M&Ms. Where if you've got that transparent thing where you can see it and it just comes out unlimited like a waterfall, you're gonna overeat the M&Ms. But anyway, let's go back to
Google. Wait, that's Google, right?
Exactly.
Okay, all right. So we'll get into this. So actually, the reason why I want to create this parallel because the Dorito, you can actually trace it back to the invention of a technology, and I find it fascinating. A lot of people don't realize this technology. The invention was a chemical analysis technique called gas chromatography. This is the 1950s.
Sorry, Trung, say that again. You cut off halfway.
Gas chromatography.
Okay.
So in the same way that you can trace back kind of like the attention issues we have today with smartphones, I mean that you could take it back to
Got
like
it. Okay.
realistically probably iPhone, right?
Yeah.
Even before then, there was mobile, but iPhone took it to a whole nother level. And I'm trying to like as
No,
hard as
that's a
possible
great
to keep,
parallel. I
you
like
know
it
what I mean?
because you can see the evolution from you could watch YouTube on the desktop, you can then eventually watch it on iPhone, but now it's the bam,
You
bam,
nailed it.
bam, Mr. Beast style YouTube video to a 20, 30-second video on TikTok. Just
Exactly. And I
lizard
really
brain.
want to pull this. I'm trying to pull this thread because I think it'll help people understand what the possible remedies are in the future because we are seeing fixes to the food issue we have, right? And this happened. So, 50 years before the iPhone, there was the invention of the chemical analysis technique, gas chromatography. So, I know that sounds boring AF, but let me explain. It's actually fascinating. So, this is from the book the Dorito Effect by Mark Schatzker, and the thesis of that book is let me throw this thesis to you and repeat it back to me so I've said it correctly. I want to make sure I got it right. Over the second half of the 20th century, industrial food production really took off. Right, global population doubled from say it's called 4 to 9 or 4 to 8 billion. Ballpark numbers are off the ballpark. What happens with industrial food production though? You have to standardize the types of crops you do, right? And when you standardize crops, you have to do pesticides. These are the key concerns. Is like
You need more
standardized crops.
calories for the
Yeah.
overall
So you
population.
grow
Yeah.
volume, and when you grow in volume, often what happens is that you lose a lot of flavor because the volume that ends up
And
going
nutrients. Yeah.
into, yeah, the nutrients and minerals get basically subbed out for water. Because I'll give you the simplest example: a tomato, you'd want say 4 tomatoes on a vine to grow naturally, like in our backyard, but like in industrial farms, you're gonna grow 10 to a vine, right?
Yeah.
So if you
Or
have
even
10
like meat
tomatoes,
production, if you think of like chickens, free
yeah,
roaming,
exactly.
running around to in cages. Same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of that volume actually ends up being water. So water dilutes the mineral and the vitamins as you mentioned, and also takes away the flavor. So this is where gas chromatography comes in. If over those 50 years you get rid of flavor and you're still trying to sell people food, what do you have to do? You have to add flavor back. Okay,
Yeah.
so how do you isolate flavor? Gas chromatography is a process where you isolate flavor. And I'll give you a very specific example. Vanilla. So vanilla is like the god of flavoring. Vanilla is everywhere. It's understood to be the goat of flavoring. It's so subtle. It has so many notes to it
Yeah. That
that people have
complex
been trying to
flavor. Yeah.
replicate. Yeah, it's very complex, right?
I guess that's why
And
when people talk about vanilla ice cream, it's like when you judge an ice cream, you just go for the vanilla. Like you're trying to see how good can you make the simplest thing.
exactly. It because but that vanilla is the most popular ice cream in the world. Like people, a lot of people may not know this and probably do because it's always it's a guaranteed option, right?
Yeah.
So people have been trying to isolate vanilla for ages, like the flavor of vanilla. And there is a chemical compound called vanillin. And but what's crazy is that somebody did it in the late 1800s, and they did it by you can replicate the taste of that one compound from pine cones. I want you to think about that. You can boil pine cones and get the flavor of vanillin, right? But vanilla actually has 100 different notes in it, 100 plus different compounds. So do you know the company McCormick?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do
They're like
spices
what?
and
Yeah.
sauces. Yeah, you're right now,
They're
Bilal.
on
If
the
you go to
rack, right?
your
Like the
yeah,
spice rack. Yeah.
I
They've
was about to
probably
say,
got some in there. Yeah.
you go to your spice rack right now, you will have a bottle of McCormick
Which is funny
Baileys.
because like
Yeah,
McCormick sounds like the least flavorful name. You know what I mean? It's not
yeah,
like the fan company.
exactly.
This is like, boiled potato life. I'm definitely generalizing. Someone's
No,
gonna
but
be
I
annoyed
mean,
at
you're
me for
right though,
saying
right?
that, but
Because I mean, this company came is from the 1800s because back in the 1800s, all the rise of corporations, you literally just name it after yourself, right?
yeah, yeah.
So McCormick is a spice business. You nailed it. So are you still with me here? Is like we're trying to isolate flavors.
Got it. Yeah.
Gas chromatography is the way you do it. It was a process that was invented in the early 1850s. It was invented by two chemists named Richard Synge and Archer Martin. So you could actually put a chemical or a drug into a device and have it isolated, and it tells you what the chemicals are. Once you can identify what the chemicals are, you can remake that flavor. You see what I'm saying? So that is the smartphone moment of the flavor industry. If we can try to keep that parallel, that
No, I like that.
invention, right? That invention. So fast forward to the creation of the Dorito, right? And I'll ask you this before we get to Dorito. What was the British Empire built on? We have to understand how important spice is. What is the British Empire? What were they doing in the 1600s and the 1700s?
Well,
They're
yeah, they were
traveling.
doing a lot of things. Yeah, yeah.
No, but
I'll
I mean,
keep my
like,
mouth shut
honestly,
there,
right?
but
I
yeah.
mean, they literally spent a
No, I
quarter of
get
their
it.
GDP to go to India
Yeah.
to bring back spices.
It's funny when
I
you
mean,
said it. I know this isn't the right answer. I said cups of tea in my head, though that wasn't the correct answer. But what would you be saying? Like you're talking about spices specifically, or
spices and
just
teas, yeah. It's like
yeah,
these are massive industries, right? And I saw one stat that today's flavoring industry, which is like the creation of fragrance, notes for food, is a $50 billion industry, right? So the way, and now we're gonna really get into it. So you're creating a scientific or like a mechanical industrial process to extract flavor, because the way you actually extract vanilla extract previously, like McCormick, this is how they did it before gas chromatography. You go to Madagascar, you get their crop of vanilla beans, you boil the vanillas, and then you have to like ferment them. You pull out the seeds, and then there's just this entire process, right? But guess what happens if all your crops are in an African country in the 60s and 70s? A lot of geopolitical issues.
yeah,
So, right? So in the 1970s, the Madagascar government, there's some civil strife. The vanilla crops got completely crushed. There's no exports. McCormick uh, had to pay double for half the amount they could get. They're like, we need to have a solution to this. So they took gas chromatography, isolated the flavor of vanilla, and they created imitation vanilla.
vanilla on
Exactly.
steroids.
Yeah, exactly. Well, here's the funny thing. You ever see anything that says truffle? You know how like every
Yeah, it's not
restaurant
really truffle, is it?
is exactly, bro.
It's truffle
Truffle
flavor.
oil is
Yeah,
not truffle.
yeah.
But they isolated it, and that's what happens with vanilla. So vanilla is actually probably the iPhone moment if we're gonna consider it of the
Yeah, I got
flavoring
you.
industry.
Yeah,
So
because that allowed other things to be built from that
exactly. So
same
while we track
profile.
back, just a quick, we're on the same page here. Like explanation why they created the flavor industry makes sense, right?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. I like the parallel there.
So the Dorito, then let's go to the Dorito, which is the TikTok of food, which is what I'm trying to make the point of, right? So, well, let me ask Bilal straight up: do you like burritos? I meant Doritos.
I do. I haven't had one for a while, but I'd say Pringles are my addictives. I don't really have them that often, but if I was picking between the two, for some reason, Pringle, maybe because I grew up having them more than Doritos, but they're both 10 out of 10 snacks, you know what
So
I mean?
tell
Obviously.
me, you get a tube of Pringles.
Oh, you're going
What
through it,
flavor are you
right?
got?
Oh,
What
I mean,
flavor?
honestly, do you know what? I honestly haven't had it for such a long time, but there was a barbecue flavor growing up that I would have a lot. It was very strong tasting, and then there was that onion, like what was it?
Sour
It's
cream
not
and onion.
sour cream and onion. That shit slaps as well. And then the Doritos, it's the flame one is good
Oh, flaming,
because
flaming
the
hot.
regular one's okay, but like the flame one, you know, I've got the Pakistani taste buds, bro. You know, you gotta get a little spice in your ear. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's real good.
I love that you laid that out. That you like a flaming hot. I probably could have predicted that actually if I were to say
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Right? But so here's a history of the Dorito, and it was founded by an employee of a company called Frito Company. So that probably sounds familiar. Frito Lay. It later became acquired by Pepsi Cola, and just to fast forward quickly today, is they sell $5 billion worth of Doritos a year,
It's insane.
bro. I want to
That's
think about
wild.
that.
Yeah,
$5 billion worth of Doritos.
that's a
So
lot.
this is the history behind the creation of the Dorito, and we're gonna see how hard I can pull this thread to keep the analogy. Like right now, Bilal, this is the foundation of this analogy. It's a wibbly wobbly right now.
No,
I think
it's
I got some
working.
pieces there,
Keep it
right?
going. Keep it
Yeah.
going. I believe in you,
So,
Trunk.
all right, all right.
No, go on, go on.
No, well, for some double inside baseball, like the listeners, for anybody that's still here, but at this point, we probably have some serious retention issues on this episode. But this is they're seeing me workshop an article live. Like I'm trying to form a perfect article here. Okay, early 1960s, guy's name's Arch West. He goes to Disneyland. There's a restaurant inside Disneyland called Casa de Fritos. What kind of restaurant do you think that is, Bilal?
I mean, it's not Indian food, is it?
Yeah, it's a Mexican joint.
Yeah, yeah.
So at the end of the
The
day,
Indians of North America, you know. So,
exactly. Right?
that's a terrible thing to say because there's lots of Indians here too. I was saying in the UK we're the dominant brown people and Mexican or Latino people.
Yo, Rafa, you might just have to cut that.
Yeah, no, we can keep it in. We can keep it in. God.
All right.
Also, like we have chicken tikka masala. Indian food is very popular here. Mexican food is very popular. That was the parallel there.
Oh, that's the parallel you're making.
Yeah, I was saying dominant subculture within the populace.
Well, we had the running joke, right? What is the national dish for the UK? Honestly,
I think it's chicken tikka masala.
Yeah. It is, right? Yeah. Well, what is it? It's either that, fish and chips, or like
or the chicken shop, you know, which is the fried chicken shops, you know. But no, it is chicken tikka masala for sure.
All right. So back to Arch West, this employee of Frito company. He sees at this restaurant, at the end of the day, they're taking tortillas. So at the end of the day, they haven't used the tortillas to make all of their tacos. They cut them into triangles, fry them, dust a little bit of some powder on them. Delicious. That's a Dorito snack. Arch West goes to Frito-Lay or Frito company. He's like, we need to make this into a snack. He's like, I basically want to create a chip out of corn that tastes like Tex-Mex food. That was his goal. Okay? So they start doing it with seasoning, like the standard seasoning that exists, probably some combo, I don't know, paprika or whatever, but there's no Tex-Mex flavor, right? That's where gas chromatography comes into play. They basically take the equivalent of a taco and like start isolating every single flavor out of it. And they're like, we're going to make a dust, a magic dust. Like remember the top of the episode, the meme of the week?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy was talking about Dorito dust, but I've seen that joke a lot of places where if you gave a caveman, well, here's the perfect analogy. If you gave a caveman a single Dorito, literally that you know the Doritos you get at the end of the bag where all it is dust, and it's like you eat it and you might be transferred to like another world. If you gave that to a caveman, your head would literally explode. Yeah. That concentrate. So here's an analogy. You thought I was done? Here it comes. If you gave a caveman TikTok for an hour, what do you think would happen to them?
Oh, they would explode, yeah.
Their brains would melt, right?
Yeah,
their brains
like,
would literally melt.
Yeah.
So there's the analogy I make. It's like evolutionarily, like the original person was not meant to have Doritos. And was not meant to have
side note, Tron, have you ever heard of peanut dust? Have you ever heard of this reference?
Tell me more about peanut dust.
There's a show, it's actually I'm pretty sure it's Jack's favorite show. People Just Do Nothing. And there's a character on there called Chapati G, and he's the wheeler dealer type guy, a brown guy from like West London, and he always has these crazy ideas like I'm gonna sell this thing, and he makes a product called peanut dust where he takes all the dust at the bottom of the peanut packet.
Oh, and yeah.
The whole thing is just that. So
you know that bit of dust at the end of peanuts, yeah? Basically, that's the best part. Everybody loves that bit, okay? There was a manufacturing fault where all the bags were filled with nothing but peanut dust. My uncle managed to get like 3,000 boxes of it, yeah, smuggled to the UK by smuggling himself inside a bloody crate. Mental. He got deported, unfortunately, but the boxes stayed with me. I call it peanut dust.
Peanut dust. Perfect for peckish. Peanut dust. Perfect for your wife. Peanut dust. Perfect for your daughters. Peanut dust. Even if you're in a rush. Peanut dust coming in your family's mouth. Peanut dust may contain nuts and glass.
I'll send you the video. We probably won't have time to play it today.
No, but what happened though? It was extremely successful.
No,
right?
it's just a hilarious moment in TV because people reference it today.
Do you remember this Jerry Seinfeld episode where they were selling only the muffin tops? Because they're saying that the only good,
it's the same thing, yeah.
The only good part of the muffin is the top, which is true, right? It's because the top is.
But the question is, do you enjoy them on their isolated cells, or do you need the whole muffin to enjoy the top? You know, that's the question. We need to know the Dorito guys, you know. So anyway, let's keep it going.
All right, so we're moving here. So again, I'm not clearly we've been able to adapt to Doritos and TikTok, right? But there have been deleterious effects. It's like if all you ate was Doritos, you're wrecked. And sadly, that's what a lot of people are doing, right?
And
if you
there
look at
must
some
be a
of the
YouTube
diets-
video of this, right? Like the guy who did the boiled eggs for the whole
Yeah.
month, like 20 a day.
Well,
There must
hilariously,
be
the
an
guy was a
equivalent of the
doctor.
Doritos. Yeah,
What's
that
so funny is the guy's a
doctor.
doctor, right?
Respect.
No, you're right though. But if you look at that, right, there's this stat that gets floated around. You've probably seen it. Is like 10% of food stamps go towards Coca-Cola.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's wild.
You've seen that, right? I don't know if it's directionally correct, is what I've seen.
Did we talk about this or did I hear it on a podcast recently?
No, I think you mentioned it.
Oh,
and,
yeah. It's a
but
wild
it's one of those things that
amount.
go viral on Twitter once a week.
But
right?
it kind of makes sense if you just think of how much money it's like just of a average person's calories of the week. A lot of them are drinking a lot of Coca-Cola.
It's soda.
So it makes sense.
And a lot of it impacts actually lower income communities, right?
Yeah.
Which sadly is like the similar thing as Doritos. Is like these are calories. I mean, you're getting calories with Doritos, but they're awful for you. So tell me, does that stand though? Like I'm actually just at this point workshopping the article and I'm
I get that makes a lot of sense.
The parallel?
I am seeing parallel, and I think another parallel I'd add to that, or just another point on it, is when you kind of study the food stuff over time, it was kind of what you said. The history of it is there was a reason we switched to this model, right? Because there were billions of people starving. So that's the context people miss often.
Yes.
When they're talking of today's obesity crisis, there was a reason we had to switch to rice and corn and wheat, because it was the most calories for the cheapest amount and the biggest volume that you could produce. But then we've kind of gone past that now, especially in the developed world, where now the calories are so cheap that most people are overfed or over.
And now we're dealing with
more
that,
calories.
right?
And now we're having to reverse. So it's kind of like the TikTok thing. We're having to bring it back a little bit.
But you're seeing people, right? You nailed it. The reason why I want to make this analogy is because you're seeing what happened with the food industry, and we're starting to see what's happening with smartphones, right? It's like there's legislation now to stop children from having phones in school, right? Yeah. So like this is the parallel I'm trying to make. It's like, and I'm not saying governments regulate everything, but it's like clearly as a society, we're seeing this change. And the point I'd make is this: we've talked about it before. Smoking, how quickly smoking as a health thing like has disappeared from a lot of developed Western, right? If you go to Vietnam, people are smoking everywhere. It's because the cigarette companies directly targeted developing countries when they realized that like North America and Europe, well, Europe still smokes quite a bit, but a lot of places were turning back, right? So the whole point I'm trying to make with this is like, I think you'll see this arc with TikTok. We're starting to see it. And I'm not just TikTok, Instagram's up there. Like any type of algorithm.
Basically all social media has followed that model now though, right? So that hyper addictive, interest-based, not follower-based model.
Exactly.
And Trung, I was going to add, and we've kind of talked about it on the pod before, but I think probably in 20 years or however long it takes, we're probably going to say the same for alcohol. I don't think it's going away, but you're already seeing like I'm comparing it to smoking, for example. How accepted, even now, like I don't know what it's like with your friend group, or I don't know if it's just that age group, but when you look at the data, the consumption, like alcohol categories aren't really growing. The largest category within those companies is non-alcoholic beer, for example.
Substitutes,
is growing.
right?
Substitutes, exactly. So I'm not saying they're going away, but it's part of the fabric of our social.
It's all Huberman's fault, is what we're basically saying. That single podcast. Yeah. No, but seriously, a single podcast.
He did make a big difference on it for sure. But the other thing I'd add, Trung, is Ozempic and the GLP-1 semaglutide, and the fourth wave. I was listening to a pod on this recently, but Dr. Mike Israetel, if anyone follows him, he's like the jacked PhD guy who's a gym bro sort of looking dude, but he's a pretty smart guy. And a lot of the research is now showing a lot of people who are on those, GLP-1s or whatever they are. There's like 3 versions after that are already in the market pretty much, or 2 that are in the market, and then the third one is kind of coming. People, anecdotally, I've read as well, a lot of people will start taking those and they stop drinking because they're just like, I don't have a taste for it. They don't get the buzz. Right? Yeah, they don't get the buzz from that feeling anymore. So that's going off on a tangent, but let's
No, it's good. Listen,
I think it's related though, because it's that addictive. Is very related. What they call this thing food noise is the phrase used for people that are often overweight, eating too much. they wake up with that feeling of, oh, I need this next thing. And it's the addictive feeling like you get on TikTok when you can't put it down. And that GLP-1 or whatever is calming that down for a lot of people. So it is very interesting. I do think it's going to have a massive impact on things beyond just food. And alcohol is probably one of them.
I heard gambling, gamblers also on GLP-1s have lost the appetite to get, like, it's like a freaking miracle drug. But like, listen, we don't know there's no such thing
I'm
as
sure there's some
free lunch,
downsides.
right? But I want to bring another point up to what you kind of said is like what happens on the other side of this is like we talked about last week with the Meta Orions, right? Is like, will this help people get off smartphones? We kind of settled in a place where we don't really want a world, but then you basically said it's a very big difference between what you want and then what ends up happening. Yeah. But like, if you're talking about on the smartphone versus being present with glasses, you can make an argument that being present with glasses is taking us back in a positive way, away from just always being online. And like, the last thing I'll say about Dorito is I'll just kind of talk about why it's done so well, the actual structure of it. And then we could talk about, I'll kind of hand it off to you to see your thoughts on that. But I think you nailed the main point was like, this whole analogy that I'm trying to make, you already brought it, was like, what is on the other side of it, right? Is like, I think the main point I'd say from what you said is the availability. We're in a culture now where the availability, let's say, of non-alcoholic drinks, when you go to a bar now, you're right, they actually have a whole, like a quarter of a menu. The drink side will be like, here are the non-alcoholic options, right? It's because they know that friend groups
there's a growing demand for it,
Exactly. So in the same way that we kind of shun Doritos by substituting more healthy snacks and also kind of asking grocers to not have them so visible, there's clearly sociological and cultural cues here to the pendulum swung way too far one way. And I'll just finish up with the science of the actual Dorito.
As you're doing it, can I just say one thing? You just described the Dorito to me is like the TikTok or whatever, but you're talking about the glasses versus the phone. To me, the glasses, the way you described it there, and you can debate that, is like the healthy, in air quotes, Dorito, where they're not using the bad oil.
It's like the vegan one, right?
Yeah. Whereas like actually what's better is you just eat a piece of fruit, it's like that's putting the phone and glasses away is the equivalent there. So I just want to say that before you go into the science, but
I like that. Well, let me jump on that too. Like the human nature part though is like, you just know some people are just not going to get an apple, right? So like you kind of have to walk them off the plank slowly, like backwards. So a couple of details about Dorito, which are just fascinating from a science aspect, right? So with a lot of junk food, you have to remember in nature, very few natural whole food things come with fat and sugar together. I want you to think about that. How many things in nature just naturally have fat and sugar in high?
That's a good point.
Not right. If you actually think about it, there's almost nothing that has those two things. Like a pork rib or like the pork belly, fat and protein, right? Not a lot of sugar. Corn, lots of sugar. Tomatoes, sugars,
not much
fruits,
fat.
Sugar. That combination, that's why junk food is so crazy.
Because they combine the two.
Fat and sugar. You hear what I'm saying? It's like,
because you get the palatability of the sugary stuff, but then you get the satisfying feeling of the fat.
And if you look at a label for Dorito, it's almost exactly the calorie mix. It's 50% fat, 50% sugar.
And actually, Trung, just on that though, like if you think of like a burger, the burger patty on its own is fat protein, but what you add to it is the tomato, and then you add the bun, and then you add some ketchup, and that's why you get that combination. That's actually a great point.
And with fries, right? And with fries.
Oh yeah, you ketchup too.
Dude, fries.
Oh yeah, sorry, there's carbohydrate. Yeah,
both. So there's that number one thing about Dorito, but that's a lot of chips. Let's start working into that. They got the magic dust, right? Dude, they have if you go look at the label, the list of flavors on Doritos, I mean, it's sickening, right? You're like, I'm putting this in my body. MSG, sugar, salt, that's sodium cyanide, guanylate, garlic, pepper, tomato, onion powder. Now, here's the key. There's so many things that in the industry they call it a non-specific aroma. Not a single flavor is dominant. And when not a single flavor is dominant, you don't get sick of it as much or as quickly. Similar with Coca-Cola, actually. there's I mean, Warren Buffett famously talked about it. It doesn't sate you, as in the flavor memory is there is none.
Yeah.
When Coca-Cola, this is actually the secret of Coca-Cola in a lot of ways. The flavor memory quickly dissipates. It doesn't just there's no long lasting thing. So like you kind of just want to get it again, right? You see what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
that's Dorito. It's called a non-specific aroma.
You're right.
so it
Everyone
doesn't
knows that
saturate.
feeling when you've had something and it's all you can taste is that you don't want to keep going.
Exactly,
This is different.
bro.
This is like yearning for more.
You nailed it. And like that's the mix of that Dorito. Okay. And then cooking method. So humans have developed a craving for compounds that come out of the cooking process. That's why we cook food. That's why so much flavor is coming out of food, right? Dorito is cooked 3 different ways. The corn kernels are boiled, they're mashed and turned into a paste, and then you toast and deep fry them. So you're hitting every single cooking mechanism to release every compound, right? And then we're finishing up here. But one of the main things with Doritos, but the biggest culprit, I want you to contrast what I'm about to say with a Cheeto. It's called vanishing caloric density. When you put one of the puffy Cheetos, not the crunchy one, you put a puffy Cheeto in your mouth, it just disappears. It melts, right? So even though you're getting those calories, your body is actually not physically feeling those calories. So it's called vanishing caloric density. So that means you're not getting the signal that you're full.
Up. Oh,
So you're
yeah.
just that's why
You just
people
keep
do
going.
this with a lot of. You see what I'm saying? For what's funny is that the listeners, I hope the Spotify video worked last week, people.
Yeah, it
but you're
did.
not seeing me. I'm pretending to eat some Cool Ranch Doritos right now.
Yeah.
But
That's a great point. And the other thing is often think of when people are eating those. Like you're often watching TV, watching a game, you're
Yep.
sitting at a bar and you're grabbing it and you're drinking with it or something like that. Like that is, you're also not really like mindfully you're not like, oh, I'm having all of this. You're just going to keep going. So
Exactly.
it's quite hard to do that with a steak, because you're going to have
No,
like 50 bites before you swallow
or
or 20 bites.
let's go. What's a very strong or tikka masala? You're not fucking scooping spoons of tikka
That's
masala.
what, you know what though? I will say though, that's interesting because with tikka masala, you do get the sugary taste with the cream. Because I actually
That's
think it's
true.
quite hyper palatable in a way. Because
No, it's not hyper palatable. I'm saying it's
But
like
the
there's no
feeling for
disappearing
that.
flavor. It's
Yeah,
sitting
yeah,
there,
you're right, you're right.
Well, same with Vietnamese food because of the fish sauce, particularly.
yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the last thing I'll add, but I think we're getting close to wrapping up here, people. I hope this episode made sense.
No, this has been great.
But I'm describing that Dorito and calling it the perfect vehicle for empty calorie delivery. And then now contrast it with stuff we talked about TikTok. TikTok is the perfect vehicle to deliver attention, dopamine-inducing attention. Bilal and I have talked about it, and Jack talked about it. So of the 3 of us, and I know Bilal said that he uses it a lot less, but he has gone down. I've never gone down a multi-hour TikTok rabbit hole. I'm scared of it. I'm being very honest with you. It's like I've took it off my phone almost like within days of putting it on. But we talked about the design of TikTok, why it's so good, or why it blew up so well. Is like the example
Takes
we used
over the
was Twitter.
screen completely.
It takes over
yeah.
the screen, right? So it read like on Twitter, you'll have 4 tweets in one screen. You actually don't like the algorithm doesn't actually have full visibility in what you want. But with TikTok, it's so simple. It's that whatever activity you're doing on that one screen is telling the algo whether or not you like it, and they add on top of the fact that it's video, which audio of movements.
And then they had the music addictive part of
exactly
music as well.
And then you know the
originally.
3 like the how media moves. It goes text, image, video, right? The addictiveness of media. And then you can think of that to wrap up here. Similarly, like the corn is the text, the book, the tortilla or just the corn chip itself. If you you make a paste and you fry, that's the image. But then the corn chip with this magic dust that we could do because of gas chromatography, that's the video. And then you layer on top the TikTok, right? So there's the episode.
That's a great breakdown, Trung. Thanks for doing that, mate. And I hope you guys enjoyed this slightly different format, but we will be back next week as well. And I hope you guys enjoy that. Let us know in the comments.
Peace.
See you next week. Cheers.